Hey everyone, my name is Alan Gongora. I'm managing partner of Langon Law Group. And today we will be discussing how to register a new business in Colombia. This is the third in a four-part series explaining how to start a business in Colombia. If you haven't seen our first set of videos, I highly encourage you to go back and watch those first. And as always, let's get started with some things you should consider as we proceed with these particular set of tutorials. These tutorials are intended to help anyone interested in starting a new business in Colombia. For anyone possibly purchasing an existing business or maybe expanding an existing business into the Colombian market, you will find these tutorials to be very, very useful. However, do check out our YouTube channel as well as our Facebook page, because we may have already published additional tutorials that may be more relevant to your own specific legal situation. The difficulty level for these tutorials is basic. This means that you don't really need any prior understanding of this process, and you don't really need any specialized knowledge of the topic itself. It should be very, very user-friendly for anyone interested in starting a new business in Colombia. As always, keep in mind that these tutorials are only intended to provide general observations and suggestions. Remember that I'm actually a licensed New York corporate attorney, and while everything you will hear and see has been reviewed and approved by Colombian attorneys, these tutorials are not intended to provide actual legal advice. We highly recommend that you consult with your own local attorney to discuss your own specific legal requirements. And with that out of the way, let's get started. I wanted to get started with a list of the key public and private entities that are involved in registering a new business in Colombia. These include, number one, notaries. Anyone who travels to Colombia for any length of time will eventually visit a local notary. Unlike in the United States, where pretty much anyone can be licensed as a notary, notaries in Colombia are private brick-and-mortar administrative monopolies, managed by quasi-government officials. All your company registration documentation will need to be signed at a local notary so that the notary official can certify the identity of all signatories. Note that while rare, it is possible that a local notary will require that you bring an official translator in order to sign your documentation. 2, Chamber of Commerce. Unlike other jurisdictions, business entities in Colombia are registered with a local Chamber of Commerce. It is the equivalent of the various secretaries of state in the United States who receive registration documentation, or maybe the Companies House in the UK. All initial registration documentation will need to be filed with the Chamber of Commerce where your business is actually located. The DIAN, or the Dirección de Impuestos y Aduanas Nacionales, is Colombia's tax authority. New companies will need to interact extensively with the DIAN, especially starting out. This includes by requesting a new tax ID, the so-called NEET number, requesting an initial set of enumerated invoices for your business, and even requesting confidential codes and passwords in order to report information directly to the DIAN. Industria y Comercio. All businesses are required to be registered with the local municipal tax authority, or Industria y Comercio. Commercial banks. All business entities are actually required to have a business bank account. Your local legal service provider will proceed with opening a new account once the company registration process is complete. In terms of options, there are several banks in the market, including Bancolombia, Banco de Bogotá, BBVA, and there are others. There are a bunch. As an American, I can tell you that Colombian banks are pretty terrible. If you were to push me, I would probably say that Bancolombia is the best of the worst for business banking. Brokerage Company. As mentioned in an earlier tutorial, given that most new corporate bank accounts are not allowed to receive international transfers for a period of at least 6 months, most foreign clients choose to register a local brokerage account. It's basically a workaround measure, okay? And there are two great options in the market. The first is called Alianza Valores. It's a very old school company. It's been in the market for a very long time. And there's also Acciones y Valores, which is affiliated with Western Union. Banco de la República. This is the central or national bank of Colombia. It will be relevant to your business registration because you will need to register your transfers into Colombia in order to capitalize your business correctly. We will delve deeper into this process in a separate tutorial. For now, you should know that you need to transfer funds into your local business account in a very specific way. If it is not done correctly, this could have significant implications for your company accounting and could subject your company to fines. The following is a general chronology capturing how most company registrations are organized in Colombia. Keep in mind that this chronology may deviate, sometimes drastically, depending on your own business situation. Step number 1, sign documentation. Once your local attorney has drafted all relevant documentation, you will need to sign that documentation at either a local notary or at a foreign consulate. Step number 2, send documentation if abroad. If you sign documentation outside of Colombia, you will need to send originals to your local service provider in Colombia so they can use it locally. Step number 3, documents are submitted to the Chamber of Commerce. Your local legal service provider will submit legal and administrative documentation to the local Chamber of Commerce in order to commence the registration process. Processing times vary widely, depending on the entity, but expect approval between 1 and 10 business days. Step number 4, registration of control status. Depending on how your company is set up, you may be required to submit additional information in order to clarify who actually controls the business, the so-called situación de control. Step number 5, SIRE registration. Depending on how your company is set up, you may be required to submit additional information, the so-called SIRE process, in order to clarify whether any foreigner provides any benefits to your company. Step number 6, request tax ID number. Your local legal service provider will submit legal and administrative documentation to the local tax authority, the DIAN, in order to request an official tax ID number, the so-called NIT. Step number 7, register with Industria y Comercio. Your local legal service provider will also need to register your new company with the local municipal tax authorities as part of the registration process. Step number 8, open bank account. Once your company is registered and you have an official tax ID number, you can register a corporate bank account. Keep in mind that most banks will request that a legal representative with a valid cedula sign the registration documentation. Registering a company in Colombia is not for the faint of heart. It's a far cry from places like the United States or even parts of Europe where you can easily register a business online in under 30 minutes. Expect an unending paper chase. There will be lots of forms to fill out and everything needs to be done just right or it will be rejected by the relevant entities. Timing varies widely. Always assume the worst case scenario in terms of timing when dealing with public and private entities in Colombia. The law can be irrelevant. Public and private entities will often interpret applicable laws and regulations inconsistently. Reps are only human. Expect out-and-out mistakes more than just occasionally, and throw in some misplaced documentation while you're at it. It's pretty crazy. Here's our advice on this. Patience is a virtue, seriously. It may actually travel through a fairly circuitous path, but your company registration should be approved eventually, assuming you have two things. 1, patience, and 2, a reputable legal service provider. And that's the end of our third episode in this series. We encourage you to watch the remaining episodes so you can gain additional insight into the business registration process in Colombia. We hope you found the information presented to be both useful and practical for myself and the rest of our local team in Colombia. Thank you for joining us. Take care, everyone. We hope you enjoyed this video. Please hit subscribe and hit the bell to get the latest content from our local law firm in Colombia.